What's going on, guys? My name is David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. Right now in 2021, I'm a registered architect in the state of Western Australia, and today we're talking about the process of hiring an architect and getting your custom home or even potentially a commercial project built and ready to move in. So where does it all start? Well, it generally starts with an introduction between yourself and myself, for example. We start by getting to know each other a little bit and understanding the project, what is going on in your head, and what kind of realistic expectations you might have about this project. We might start talking, let's use this example as a house. So it might be a house on a brand new vacant block. We know that you want a specific set of instructions for that house, potentially 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, keeping it simple. We might understand what kind of style and feel you like for the house and how you want it to go. They're the basics that we don't really have to cover in this video. It's kind of just expected that that conversation is going to occur. But from there, most things are a mystery to people. They don't know the process, they don't know what happens. So generally what happens is you engage an architect through a formal contract agreement. That contract will outline a scope of services for that individual project, for that individual block. Usually you cannot take a project away to another block, even if they're identical, without the consent of the architect. So it's important that you get the block and everything else absolutely correct. Once a contract between yourself and myself has been established, we then start actually working and doing some documentation. So we begin with the sketch design phase. The sketch design phase is the very start of the whole project. It's where we try and extrapolate our understanding of your idea. You've told us one thing and we will create whatever we can based on the understanding of what you've given us. We're trying to basically read your mind at this point in time. We're trying to understand what you're thinking and how you're thinking to be able to best design for you specifically. 9 times out of 10, it isn't always perfect straight away because we're only trying to read your mind. We can't actually read your mind. So what happens here is we come and sit down with you for the first time after about a week or so. We then discuss that project and that sketch design with you and understand what you like and what you don't like about it so we can continue on with the project. So once we've sat down and discussed that first project, that first attempt from us, we'll go back and begin developing that sketch design. Usually there's either 1 or 2 more sketch designs before we absolutely nail that brief and we get exactly what you're looking for out of that architectural project. Once we've completed sketch design, we'll move on to a phase called design development. Design development is where we really start breaking down the project and working through it in a more architectural sense. We now start implementing the council policies, the government policies, and all the local regulations that might affect this project. We take this project further until the point where it's ready to submit to council. So it gets more detailed, it gets more thought out, it gets more planned out, and it gets a lot more documentation behind it. Towards the end of design development, it's all about understanding the project a little bit better and understanding those council policies so that when we submit to council, there isn't that many external changes that need to happen after you get a development approval. This project is usually still very personal, one-on-one with you. We walk you through this process, we talk about it. We then generally discuss and have many meetings in between that first sketch design where it was a stab in the dark to where we're ready to submit to council to have a planning approval. So in Australia, this is considered a development application where you're looking to get a development approval. So that way you can actually go and apply for a building permit. Now, when we've submitted to council, it can take up to 90 days and just sit there in the council. Yes, we can continue to do work on this project, but it's completely up to you. Sometimes clients want to push and get projects done quicker, so we start working on what's called the working drawings. The working drawing can either be started once we get development approval or they can be started simultaneously once it's at council. It's completely up to you. But the working drawings is where we get down into the technical details of the house. We start analyzing every connection point, every detail. We start selecting materials. We start selecting plumbing fixtures, taps, toilets, showers, shower heads, and we just go through the list one by one. This is where you really get involved and you start to enjoy and experience the process a lot more. This is where it's all about you, it's all about your selections, or alternatively, you can hire an architect as an interior designer as well, and they can complete that whole fit out for you. The working drawings are usually a rather large set of documents. There's about 40 or 50 odd pages in total just of documentation and drawing. There's potentially also another 100, 200, 300 pages, depending on how big the project is, of actual specifications of everything that you've selected to go in this house. Once this working drawings is completed, we're ready to send it out for tender. Now, what tender means is we can either go out and select a number of builders who would like to tender on this project and give you their best price, or a number of builders can be invited. There's a whole series of different ways. The general consensus is that we're going out to builders to be able to get a quote back for the project and for it to be very competitive so you get the best price possible. The tender process is anywhere from about 4 to 5 weeks depending on how large the project is. It can span longer if it's a busy period or an extremely large project. The builders will then come in with their price, usually on the very last minute of the very last day of the tender process, because they don't want their price to be leaked to their competitors, so they're very secretive about it, even if they finish 3 weeks before. Once all the tenders have come in, we get you back into the boardroom usually, and we sit down and discuss all of the tenders that have come back in. Again, 9 times out of 10, the tenders come in within budget, because we're always budget checking and budget controlling throughout the whole project. It's our job to make sure we try and stick to budget, even though sometimes we go over. If that does happen, for example, and we do go over the budget, most of the time it's only 5 or 10%, and most clients are okay with that. If they aren't, then we look at ways of reducing the cost. We either take out some of the specifications, pick some cheaper items, or we make the house smaller, redesign, or do whatever we can to bring that price and that whole project back into budget. The selection of the builder is then considered the final point of the tender process. It isn't always the cheapest builder, because when you review tenders, there is a lot of elements that could be missing. So the cheapest tenderer could be cheaper by $50,000, but they could have missed some substantial elements in the build. So the second cheapest builder, who has thoroughly done their research and knows every bit of this house, has potentially priced it perfectly. Whereas now you know that second cheapest builder is actually really the cheapest builder. So the tender process and the tender results aren't always fair and even towards the end, and the bottom line figure isn't always what it appears to be. At the end of the day, it is absolutely the client's choice, so it's your choice to decide which builder you want to go for. If you want to go for the most expensive, most premium builder out of all the tenders who've been in that process, you are absolutely more than welcome to. We only provide recommendations on who we believe has given the best price and is the best suited for your project. So at this point in time, we reach a fork in the road. It's up to the client to decide if they want project management or contract administration from the architect, or if they wish to part ways. Usually, most people decide to part ways because they like to be as heavily involved as possible with their home during the construction process. Now, obviously, as an architect, I recommend against this for the simple fact that you're a lot more emotionally invested than any architect who is project managing your job. So it is our best interest to be able to produce the best quality at the end of the day and make the best possible choices. If you decide to part ways with your architect, the process has been fairly simple. It has been predominantly around designing that perfect floor plan and designing every single element for you to be able to go out to a builder with a full set of documentation that they can build the house from. If you decide, on the other hand, to stick with your architect for the remaining portion of your contract, well then the architect is very active and constantly in communication with you. So the architect's role in the project management or the contract administration phase is for them to be able to actually mediate that process and to be the middleman. So the builder will always come to the architect and ask the architect all the questions first. If the architect, for example, doesn't know the question, that's when it will be relayed back to the client. However, most of the time, all the questions are simply in the documentation that the builder has missed, or it's something that wasn't documented entirely for one reason or another, and then the architect can answer that accordingly. The architect usually manages all the progress claims that come in for the builder, so every time the builder claims for a certain value of money, the architect goes out on site, assesses that claim to make sure it's entirely accurate and that all the works completed so far are genuinely up to a high standard, and then they're able to process that claim. If a builder tries to pull a wool over your eyes and claim for something that hasn't been completed, well then as the architect, as the mediator, you can easily reject that claim and only pay for a certain portion of the fees that have been actually completed. This is usually where clients and builders get into arguments, because clients don't want to pay something, or the builder is trying to force them to pay something and they have no leg to stand on. Whereas the architect is the mediator, they are the contract administrator. What they say goes. If the architect says, no, this hasn't been completed, therefore it is not being paid, that's it, the client pays for only that section that has been completed. However, this works vice versa as well. If the client is complaining about something that the builder is wanting to charge them for, and you go in as the architect and assess everything, and look at this claim and go, well, this is a genuine claim, it needs to be paid for. Again, that is the final verdict, it's the final thing, and the client has to pay for whatever that architect has provided that certificate for. Now this goes on for the whole construction process until we get to the very end where the builder believes they've reached practical completion. Practical completion is a term in the building industry where the builder believes they have reached a stage where the project is practically complete. So it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% complete, but it is practically there. A little scratch here and there or a little dent that needs to be fixed up is definitely not considered as anything major. But no roof, couple walls missing, no doors, kitchen not installed, things like that that are pretty major that wouldn't allow you to move in properly are not considered practically complete. At this point in time, again, we meet with the builder on site who has your keys ready to go. As the architect, we walk through that entire project and look for any defects that the builder may have missed, may have done incorrectly, or anything that we would consider a defect. Defects can be anything from a scratch on the wall to actually something completely wrong on the floor plan. Once the practical completion stage has been reached and this inspection has been completed, the client, yourself, takes possession of the site. It is your site now. You can move in, you can live in it, you can do whatever you like with that property. Now at this point in time, it is entirely your project, it is entirely your home, and we step away for approximately 12 months. In 12 months time, we will come back to that site and do a final inspection. It's 12 months, generally speaking, because it allows for all 4 seasons. So if your project finished, for example, at the end of winter, you'll make sure that you see the next winter and experience if there's any leaks, any floods, or anything like that that might occur. The final inspection is there for us, again, to investigate that property, to understand if anything has gone wrong, if any defects have occurred, and if all the defects from the previous inspection have been rectified. After this final inspection, that is the end of the journey with your architect. That is usually where your architect parts ways and you say your goodbyes. Most of the time when you build a home with a client and an architect, the relationship matures and you become friends at the end of the day. So just because this is the end of your professional relationship as architect and client doesn't always necessarily mean it's the end of your relationship as friends. Now, the whole project is very enjoyable and sometimes a little bit stressful, I won't lie to you. But that's why you have your architect there by your side to help you and guide you through the process. It is something that we absolutely love doing, we love creating, we love seeing our projects come to life. So if you are excited to start your journey with an architect, make sure you do your homework on them, make sure you genuinely just enjoy them as a person because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them over the next couple of years. Anyway, that's all from me today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below. This is still a video in February, so we are doing 28 videos in 28 days. Usually it would be see you next Monday, but because it is February, I'll see you tomorrow.